So since the dawn of humanity, man has always dealt with the thought that we're not good enough to be in the position that we are in, right? That we're just always portraying and projecting a fake or fraudulent version of us that doesn't exist truly. So I got like a job opportunity about a year ago, and it was something that I had never done. Like it was kind of in a similar field, but it wasn't on the same side of work that I was doing before. It was like a completely different side of the job, right? And I got like a big time pay raise and a bunch of other benefits, right? And it was something to be proud of. And of course, whenever something like that happens to most people, I kind of told myself I got lucky, right? Like it was just because it was like a guy left before and he wouldn't want that job anymore, and they needed a replacement, and so it just happened to be me. And then I started to perform very well in this job. At least that's like what people were telling me. But in my own head, I'm kind of just assuming that since I'm like the new guy on this side, they're just kind of being nice to me, that they're not really meaning what they're saying. And I'm just literally sitting there doing my job and trying my best, but in my head I'm still stuck in the idea that somehow eventually these people are gonna come to the realization that I'm not the right guy for this job. And all of these things can be defined or umbrellaed under the term imposter syndrome, right? And it's really weird how like better success or more success can make you feel worse than before, like when you were in the slums or you were in a job that was worse. And it's weird because I've always had this like saying in my life that you create your own luck. So I should have already been able to overcome like that idea of the imposter syndrome from the jump. Like I already understand it, but it's inevitable. The human condition is gonna hold you back sometimes, and it's just you have to come to the realization and you have to think and you have to ponder a little bit, right? But I guess I wouldn't say imposter syndrome is like the worst thing ever. Obviously you can be very good at your job and still feel like an imposter. Of course, it's not your actual ability, it's really what you tell yourself about your abilities. You'll tell yourself like, I'm not good at this job that I'm partaking in, but I'm just like faking it till I make it, right? But how much of our identity is based on what we actually know versus what we believe other people think about us? Because there's many different versions of us, right? Like there's a version of that you see yourself as, there's a version that other people see you as. There's so many different versions, and we got to figure out which one is the true us. But the truth is that pretty much all of them are us. And I think the biggest cause of the imposter syndrome today is because of social media, of course. You see everybody else's successes and everything, but you don't see their own thoughts. And most people have this same idea that they're probably not good enough for what they are doing, right? That they don't deserve whatever they're doing. But like I said before, people create their own luck, quote unquote luck. If I didn't do my job to a point like where people noticed me and they never like looked at me for the opportunity to replace the previous guy, I would have never had that job. It's simple, but I worked hard and I learned a lot about the job that I was in. So they understood that if I was to take this guy's spot, I would be able to learn and train myself on what this new opportunity has like in store for me, right? They saw that, but for some reason I couldn't see it myself. But it's so weird, bro. But I think if you do have imposter syndrome, that's like a very good sign, because that usually means that you care a lot about what you're doing. Because if you don't, like, you really won't care. Like in your mind, you won't be an imposter because you are what you are. You don't really give a crap. You don't care about failing at what you're doing. But when you really want to be successful, usually this imposter syndrome comes to bite you in the butt, and it's gonna eat at your mind, right? Because you don't think that you're good enough, because you're still training, like you're still learning more, and that's okay. But like I said, this is like a very good sign that you're headed in the right direction. And maybe telling yourself this is actually like very important. I didn't even think about that till right now. Kind of just ripping it off the mind. But like ultimately, your feelings are not evidence for what you're doing. Feeling like garbage doesn't mean you are garbage. Feeling like a fake or you're hoodwinking somebody doesn't mean you actually are hoodwinking somebody. And you can see the tangible evidences by, asking yourself these questions like, what is it that you've accomplished? So I went from having a worse job, well, I guess I say worse, but it was a solid job, to having a potential career and one that I can like really be proud of. And that's the tangible evidence. Like the money that I had received, or the money that I'm getting now is more. The fact that people are commending the work that I'm doing, these are like tangible evidences, not feelings that are just engulfing my brain because I'm overthinking everything. You know, you got to ask yourself, what is it that you're doing that you are capable of? What things are you exceeding in? And then what things are you not doing so well in and that you can still work on? You know, taking a look at it like that will help you get over that feeling of fraudulence, right? I mean, just like, and I know we don't want to compare, right? I just said that, but you know, if you did compare and you looked at somebody else doing the same thing that you're doing, but it wasn't you, it was somebody else, like maybe it was a friend, like would you call them a fraud? Probably not, right? You'd be like, oh man, he's doing really good. And so just, you have to like flip it. You have to change the way you're looking at it and really zoom out outside of your own mind. And you got to understand that, you know, maybe you are a little inexperienced in the job that you're doing or whatever it is that you're doing. Maybe you're not, well, you know, you actually are not experienced. You know, you're barely starting. And that's okay, bro. That's literally okay. You don't have to convince yourself that you're some expert in the field or that you understand all these things. You're not a master, bro. You're learning and you're going to make mistakes, but you would still belong in this position. You know, you can't overcome imposter syndrome by proving that you're perfect. You got to overcome it by, you know, understanding and accepting that you are imperfect. And I think most people, they don't necessarily fear failure. I think they fear looking like they're failing to other people, right? And that's what I mean by social media. Like, nobody ever shows the failures. Nobody wants to be seen by others as a failure. You know, failing, if you failed by yourself, like you cut down a tree in your backyard and you cut a branch and the branch hit you in the head, right? You cut it wrong and it swings back and hits you in your face. Like, if nobody was around, you wouldn't really care. But if somebody was around, oh, you'd be super shameful. You'd feel full of shame, right? Becoming good at anything requires, you know, a little bit of an embarrassing period or, you know, era where you're not the greatest at it yet. You got to be willing to ask questions and take criticism, right? Like, you got to be willing to do that and understand that it is going to be a little awkward at first, but don't take those things and use them as evidence that you don't belong. But at the same time, like, also, you know, your success, you don't want it to become your identity. Like, that's not the way to go about it either, because like if that's your whole identity, then failure completely dismantles that identity. So you have to change that into identifying yourself as someone who's learning and learns a lot and learns fast and keeps learning, right? Like, you're growing. That's who you are. You're not somebody that's 100% successful at everything, because failure will collapse that ideology in your brain. And I guess in the end, you know, the whole purpose of this isn't necessarily to get rid of imposter syndrome, because like I said, it's evidence that you really do care about what you're doing, and you're never gonna wake up one day and just automatically or, you know, permanently stop doubting yourself. I think a more realistic take on this is that eventually you can learn to recognize the voice you hear. You know, when you tell yourself you don't belong in your head, you know, you can kind of argue with yourself about that. You know, you say you don't belong here. Well, you know, maybe I don't, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I have a mission, and this job or this thing I'm doing is the way to get to that mission. And in a way, I kind of see it like, in order to become something, you have to be it. It's kind of weird. It doesn't really make sense, but in my head it does. You do kind of have to fake it till you make it. You have to have like a foundation of traits in order to become something, right? That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, if you wanted to be a supervisor at your job or whatever, you'd first have to have the motivation to be that, and, you know, have the willingness and drive to lead people, because it doesn't just happen after you become a supervisor. All of a sudden you have that drive and, you know, willingness to work super hard, right? You have to have that first, and then you become the supervisor, right? And I think that's a lot of people's problem now, where they want the job title or the money first, and then all of a sudden they're just gonna become some super hard worker, right? Or somebody that's trustworthy or loyal, right? Like, that's not how it works. Usually, not even usually, all the time, you are gonna need these inherent traits or learning no, I guess not inherent, but traits that you learn as you grow older, right? Before you get that job title or before you become whatever you desire to be, right? And I guess I'll just kind of close it off with this. You know, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Stop trying to control the perception of you. You know, focus on the person that you're actually becoming, and then that goal you're shooting for, it's gonna come true. I 100% believe that. And like I said, create your own look. But yeah, that's all I got today. You know, God bless. Deuces.